3A. How safe is our food? A week before Christmas, 1992, Lauren Beth Rudolph ate a cheeseburger from a fast food restaurant in California. On Christmas Eve, suffering from severe stomach pain, Lauren was admitted to the hospital. There she endured 3 heart attacks before eventually dying on December 28th. She was 6 years old. The burger Lauren ate was contaminated with the virulent bacteria E. coli 0157H7. Her death was the first in an outbreak that caused 732 illnesses in 5 states and killed 4 children. The E. coli bacteria are so virulent that it takes no more than a few of them to cause deadly infection. We used to think of foodborne illness as little more than a stomachache, says Joseph Levitt of the U.S. government's Food and Drug Administration. After the Rudolph case, we realized this was no issue of stomach aches, but a serious and compelling public health problem. Bacteria to blame. There is more risk involved in our everyday activity of eating than you might think. It is estimated that each year in the United States, 76 million people suffer from foodborne diseases. 325,000 of them are hospitalized and 5,000 die. In the developing world, contaminated food and water kill almost 2 million children a year. In most cases, virulent types of bacteria are to blame. Bacteria are an integral part of a healthy life. There are 200 times as many bacteria in the colon of a single human as there are human beings who have ever lived. Most of these bacteria help with digestion, making vitamins, shaping the immune system, and keeping us healthy. Nearly all raw food, too, has bacteria in it. But the bacteria that produce foodborne illness are of a different, more virulent kind. Many of the bacteria that produce foodborne illnesses are present in the intestines of the animals we raise for food. When a food animal containing dangerous bacteria is cut open during processing, bacteria inside the animal can contaminate meat. Fruits and vegetables can pick up the dangerous bacteria if washed or watered with contaminated water. A single bacterium, given the right conditions, divides rapidly enough to produce colonies of billions over the course of a day. This means that even only lightly contaminated food can become highly infectious. The bacteria can also hide and multiply on sponges, dish towels, cutting boards, sinks, knives, and kitchen counters, where they're easily transferred to food or hands. Changes in the way in which farm animals are raised are also affecting the rate at which dangerous bacteria can spread. In the name of efficiency and economy, fish, cattle, and chickens are raised in giant factory farms, which confine large numbers of animals in tight quarters. Cattle, for example, are so crowded together under such conditions that even if only one animal is contaminated with E. coli 0157H7, it will likely spread to others. Tracking the source. Disease investigators like Patricia Griffin are working to find the sources of these outbreaks and prevent them in the future. Griffin of the U.S. CDC, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, has worked in the foodborne disease business for 15 years. Outbreaks like the incident that killed Lauren Beth Rudolph turned her attention to the public food safety threat that exists in restaurants and in the food production system. Food safety is no longer just a question of handling food properly in the domestic kitchen. Now, Griffin says, we are more aware that the responsibility does not rest solely with the cook. We know that contamination often occurs early in the production process, at steps on the way from farm or field or fishing ground to market. Griffin's job is to look for trends in food-related illness through analysis of outbreaks. Her staff tries to identify both the food source of an outbreak and the contaminating bacteria. To link cases together, the scientists use a powerful tool called PulseNet, a network of public health laboratories connected by computer that matches types of bacteria using DNA. PulseNet allows epidemiologists to associate an illness in Nebraska, say, with one in Texas, tying together what might otherwise appear as unrelated cases. Then it's the job of the investigators to track down what went wrong in the food's journey to the table. This allows them to determine whether to recall a particular food or to change the process by which it's produced. In January 2000, public health officials in Virginia noted an unusual group of patients sick with food poisoning from Salmonella. Using PulseNet, the CDC identified 79 patients in 13 states who suffered infection from the same type of Salmonella bacteria. 15 had been hospitalized. 2 had died. What was the common factor? All had eaten mangoes during the previous November and December. The investigation led to a single large mango farm in Brazil, where it was discovered that mangoes were being washed in contaminated water containing a type of Salmonella bacteria. Salmonella contamination is a widespread problem, and more recently other Salmonella cases have been detected. In the spring of 2001, for example, almonds from a farm in California infected 160 Canadians with Salmonella. The mango and almond outbreaks had a larger lesson. We no longer eat only fruits and vegetables in season and that are grown locally, as we once did. Instead, we demand our strawberries, peaches, mangoes, and lettuce year-round. As a result, we are depending more and more on imports. Eating food grown elsewhere in the world means depending on the soil, water, and sanitary conditions in those places, and on the way their workers farm, harvest, process, and transport the products, reducing the risk. There are a number of success stories that provide hope and show us how international food production need not mean increased risk of contamination. Costa Rica has made sanitary production of fruits and vegetables a nationwide priority. Produce is packed carefully in sanitary conditions, frequent hand washing is compulsory, and proper toilets are provided for workers in the fields. Such changes have made Carmela Velasquez, a food scientist from the University of Costa Rica, optimistic about the future. The farmers we've trained, she says, will become models for all our growers. In Sweden, too, progress has been made in reducing the occurrences of foodborne disease at an early stage. Swedish chicken farmers have virtually eliminated Salmonella from their flocks by diligently cleaning up their chicken houses and by using chicken feed that has undergone heating to rid it of the dangerous bacteria. Now the chickens that Swedes buy are Salmonella-free. The success of these pioneers suggests that it is indeed feasible for companies and farms to produce safe and sanitary food while still turning a profit.
3B. The battle for biotech foods. Genetic engineering of crops and animals through the manipulation of DNA is producing a revolution in food production. It is also starting a battle between those who believe in its promise and critics who doubt and fear it. The potential to improve the quality and nutritional value of the vegetables and animals we eat seems unlimited. Such potential benefits notwithstanding, critics fear that genetically engineered products, so-called biotech foods, are being rushed to market before their effects are fully understood. What are biotech foods?
Biotech foods are produced from animals and plants that have been genetically altered. Genetic alteration is nothing new. Humans have been altering the genetic traits of plants for thousands of years by keeping seeds from the best crops and planting them in following years, and by breeding varieties to make them taste sweeter, grow bigger, or last longer. In this way, we've transformed the wild tomato from a fruit the size of a small stone to the giant ones we have today. From a plant called teosinte with an ear barely an inch long has come our foot-long ears of sweet white and yellow corn. On the other hand, the techniques of genetic engineering are new and quite different from conventional breeding. Conventional breeders always used plants or animals that were related or genetically similar. In so doing, they transferred tens of thousands of genes. By contrast, today's genetic engineers can transfer just a few genes at a time between species that are distantly related or not related at all. There are surprising examples. Rat genes have been inserted into lettuce plants to make a plant that produces vitamin C, and moth genes have been inserted into apple trees to add disease resistance. The purpose of conventional and modern techniques is the same: to insert a gene or genes from an organism that carries a desired trait into an organism that does not have the trait. Several dozen biotech food crops are currently on the market, among them varieties of corn, soybeans, and cotton. Most of these crops are engineered to help farmers deal with age-old farming problems: weeds, insects, and disease.
Are biotech foods safe for humans?
As far as we know. So far, problems have been few. In fact, according to Steve L. Taylor of the Department of Food Science and Technology at the University of Nebraska, none of the current biotech products have been implicated in allergic reactions or any other healthcare problem in people. Some biotech foods might even be safer than conventional varieties. Corn damaged by insects often contains high levels of fuminescens, toxins that are carried on the backs of insects and that grow in the wounds of the damaged corn. Lab tests have linked fuminescens with cancer in animals. Studies show that most corn modified for insect resistance has lower levels of fuminescens than conventional corn damaged by insects. However, biotech foods have had problems in the past. One problem occurred in the mid-1990s when soybeans were modified using genes from a nut. The modified soybeans contained a protein that causes reactions in humans who are allergic to nuts. While this protein was discovered before any damage was done, critics fear that other harmful proteins created through genetic modification may slip by undiscovered. The technique of moving genes across dramatically different species, such as rats and lettuce, also makes critics nervous. They fear something could go very wrong, either in the function of the inserted gene or in the function of the host DNA, with the possibility of unexpected health effects.
Can biotech foods harm the environment?
Most scientists agree that the main safety issues of genetically engineered crops involve not people, but the environment. Allison Snow is a plant ecologist at Ohio State University, known for her research on gene flow, the natural movement of plant genes from one population of plants to another. She worries that genetically engineered crops are being developed too quickly and released before they've been adequately tested. On the other hand, advocates of genetically engineered crops argue that some genetically modified plants may actually be good for the land by offering an environmentally friendly alternative to pesticide, which tends to pollute water and harm animals. Far less pesticide needs to be applied to cotton plants that have been genetically modified to produce their own natural pesticide. While applied chemical pesticides kill nearly all the insects in a field, biotech crops with natural pesticide only harm insects that actually try to eat those crops, leaving the rest unharmed.
Can biotech foods help feed the world?
800 million people on this planet are malnourished, says Chanapatna Prakash, a native of India and a scientist at the Center for Plant Biotechnology Research at Tuskegee University, and the number continues to grow. Prakash and many other scientists argue that genetic engineering can help address the urgent problems of food shortage and hunger by increasing crop quantities and nutritional value, offering crop varieties that resist pests and disease, and providing ways to grow crops on land that would otherwise not support farming. According to the World Health Organization, for example, between 100 million and 140 million children in the world suffer from vitamin A deficiency. Some 500,000 go blind every year because of that deficiency, and half of those children die within a year of losing their sight. Golden rice, a biotech variety named for its yellow color, is thought by some to be a potential solution to the suffering and illness caused by vitamin A deficiency. Skeptics, however, claim that golden rice is little more than a public relations exercise by the biotechnology industry, which they say has exaggerated its benefits. Golden rice alone won't greatly diminish vitamin A deficiency, says Professor Marion Nessel of New York University. Beta-carotene, which is already widely available in fruit and vegetables, isn't converted to vitamin A when people are malnourished. Golden rice does not contain much beta-carotene, and whether it will improve vitamin A levels remains to be seen.
What next?
Whether biotech foods will deliver on their promise of eliminating world hunger and bettering the lives of all remains to be seen. Their potential is enormous, yet they carry risks. If science proceeds with caution, testing new products thoroughly and using sound judgment, the world may avoid the dangers of genetic modification while enjoying its benefits.